Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Shruti, a participant of 39th batch of Program in Rural Management at IRMA, and I shall be the master of ceremony of today's event. We have gathered here for the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture in memory of Founder Chairman IRMA and to celebrate his 97th birth anniversary. On behalf of IRMA and on my own behalf, I hereby welcome our distinguished chief guest, Shri Amitabh Kant, CEO, NITI Aayog, Government of India, to deliver 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture. Welcome, sir. I invite our respected chairman, honorable members of the Board of Governors of IRMA, and Honorable Director IRMA to pay a floral tribute to our founder chairman on this occasion. Thank you all. I request the directors all to welcome the gathering.
Distinguished Speaker, CEO of the NITI Aayog, Shri Amitabh Kant, Chairman and members of the governing body and society members of IRMA, invited guests, faculty and staff colleagues, participants of the PRM and FPRM, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. IRMA welcomes you all to the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture. We all have gathered here to fondly remember the founder chairman of IRMA, and I thank you all for gracing this occasion by your august presence. While the great visionary, Dr. Verghese Kurien, left us in his physical form on September 9, 2012, he's still amongst each one of us in the form of thoughts and inspiration that constantly guide us to work towards making that small difference in the life of a marginalized person. To commemorate his memory, IRMA instituted the annual Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture to be held on his birth anniversary, which happens to fall on the 26th of November every year. This year, we could not have it on that particular day, primarily because both the batches of the flagship program, PRM, were away in the field. The senior batch, PRM 38, was interning with organizations after having learned their ropes in classrooms and other out-of-classroom terms to see if the application is working there. And the junior batch, PRM 39, was in the fields of the villages of the aspirational district. They learned a few things there, and they're going to now start asking questions in the classroom and follow them through into the various terms which are in and out of the classroom terms, so that they can make very good professional managers to manage institutions in the rural areas. The first Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture was delivered by Dr. M.S. Swaminathan in November 2012. And he has been very kind to send an email yesterday afternoon on receiving an invitation from IRMA to attend this lecture. I'll read out his message so that we all can appreciate the importance he attaches to this lecture and the esteemed speaker. Sir, with your permission, quote, I'm very happy to receive the invitation to the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture. The topic as well as the speaker is very appropriate. I wish the lecture much success. I'm happy that I had the privilege of delivering the first Kurien Memorial Lecture. Please convey my regards to Shri Amitabh Kant, unquote. It is a daunting task for me to speak about a legendary personality such as Dr. Verghese Kurien. I'm particularly handicapped as I stand in front of an audience, many of whom have lived and worked with Dr. Kurien very closely. In fact, he has personally nurtured a number of people sitting in front of me right now, who know more about him than anybody else probably in the world right now. I have no such experience. And in fact, I've met him only one time, which was one-to-one. Otherwise, I've been just part of the audience which has heard him. And that one-to-one, for the one time that I had in my lifetime, is imprinted in my memory for the lifetime. It was on the July 17th of 1995, when I was called to his office to meet him because I was going to join an institute he had started, IRMA. Now, during this interview, so-called interview or an informal talk, he only asked me one thing. How many organizations have you worked for before you came here? Because I looked old that time also. And I said, fifth one. This is the fifth one. And he chuckled. And he said, well, for me, there hasn't been a big change. For 45 years, I've been at Anand and in the same organizations that I've started and working for, which was a great learning for me at that moment of time. A little too late. I wish I had met him in 79, like Sodiji had met him. Probably I would have been in the first organization ever to leave that. Yeah. A key source of the aura around him was his unfaltering integrity, zero tolerance to anything that was not fair. He was a man of conviction, and he was very clear once he identified an issue and figured out a way to tackle it. Nothing could ever stop him. He's called Milkman of India, and he has been instrumental in improving the lives and livelihoods of the Indian farmers across the country. The Amul movement and Amul brand were his greatest contributions to India and to the Indian farmers, followed by the National Dairy Development Board to replicate the efforts and to mobilize farmers for milk production all over India. This movement helped to increase the milk production and make the country self-sufficient in milk and milk products. Dr. Kurien visualized and built a whole series of institutions around NDDB to support the dairy industry. IRMA is perhaps the youngest amongst these institutions. It was conceived originally during Operation Flood II, during the 6th five-year plan in 1979, to develop professional managers to manage the cooperatives. It is my pleasant duty to welcome the CEO of NITI Aayog, Shri Amitabh Kant. I'm sure you all are very eagerly waiting to hear what he has to say to us today. He is a very, very good speaker, and that we all know. He is very, very popular in the social media, and he makes a lot of good messages for all of us to get inspiration from. We have received an overwhelming response to the announcement of the lecture by Shri Amitabh Kant. I thank him profusely for making so much effort to address us despite his busy schedule. He was looking forward to be with us for the whole day, and that is why he chose Sunday. We had originally called him on the 14th, which coincides with the foundation day of IRMA. But then he was very busy on the 14th and the 15th, so 16th was chosen because that is a Sunday. But owing to an unexpected requirement in Delhi, he could not make it in person today. However, he has promised that in this financial year, which finishes in March next year, He'll make a day's visit to Anand and spend time with Dr. Kurien's institutions. And sir, I can tell you, we'll not let you down. There are so many things to see here at Anand that you'll be surprised as to what Dr. Kurien has created here. Sir, I'm sure that during your visit to IRMA, specifically IRMA, I'm saying this as director of IRMA right now, you will help us with a catch line to catapult us to a new level, just like you did to the God's own country. Now I invite the chairman, IRMA, Shri Dilip Rath, to introduce our eminent guest speaker and invite him to deliver the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much.
Shri Amitabh Kant, CEO, NITI Aayog, Professor Hitesh Bhatt, Director, IRMA, members of the governing body and society members of IRMA, my colleagues from IRMA, NDDB, and other sister organizations, participants of the PRM and FPRM programs of IRMA, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you all a very good morning and extend a warm welcome to all of you at the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture organized by IRMA this morning to be delivered by Mr. Amitabh Kant. Although he was extremely keen to come to Anand and spend a whole day with us to see all the works being done by the institutions created by Dr. Kurien. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, he could not make it. But he has promised to visit us in the near future, and I'm sure we will be able to show him the dedicated and the focused work being done by all the institutions in a coordinated manner. But as you can see, he is very much amongst us in today's proceedings, and his virtual presence from a remote location in NITI Aayog, New Delhi, adequately compensates his physical absence in Anand. As you know, Dr. Kurien Memorial Lecture series was instituted in the memory of our legendary founder, who was the man behind the vibrant dairy industry that contributes to thrive to this day in our country. He always regarded himself as an employee of the farmers. And put the farmers in charge of their own destiny and of the cooperative institutions represented by them. And the greatness about this man is borne out from the fact that he chose not to receive a regular salary from the apex organizations he served as chairman, which is in stark contrast to what we see in many organizations in the cooperative sector today. It is to this great man that we pay our homage today. Amongst all the institutions he created, IRMA was very special and dear to him. His realization that India just cannot depend on accidental rural managers like him, but need better and more Kuriens, many more Kuriens for that matter, by carefully selecting and training them, was instrumental in creation of this institution. Over the last 38 years, IRMA has nurtured professionals who continue to take forward the vision of Dr. Kurien. Many of the IRMA graduates now lead or hold leadership positions in a variety of organizations, not only serving the rural sector, but a cross-section of the country's sectors such as development, banking, services, IT, industries, etc. He also viewed IRMA as a knowledge institution, which provides a platform to share ideas experiment them, and equip professionals to put them in practice. This institution has been fortunate to have hosted the best of academicians, professionals, researchers, and administrators whose partnership helped IRMA to contribute towards the betterments of rural India. Dr. Kurien Memorial Lecture is one such platform wherein some of the most eminent personalities have shared their ideas and views, which have undoubtedly broadened and enriched IRMA's vision. Ever since this lecture was instituted from the year 2012, IRMA has had the privilege to host 6 speakers of eminence, namely Professor M.S. Swaminathan, Professor V.S. Vyas, Professor Raghuram Rajan, Dr. Arvind Subramaniam, Mr. Vikram Singh Mehta, and Professor Ramesh Chand, who shared their views and perspectives on different aspects of our society, rural economy, and livelihoods. IRMA greatly values their association with this institution. And for the 7th lecture today, we have another eminent speaker, Mr. Amitabh Kant, who has vast administrative experience as a career bureaucrat, be it working with industry as the Secretary of the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Chairman and CEO of Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, or with the service sector, especially the tourism sector. He created a paradigm change by mainstreaming rural tourism in a tourism policy and was instrumental in projecting Kerala and the whole country as God's own country. He was the face behind Make in India, an incredible India. I thank Shri Amitabh Kant for accepting our invitation to deliver the 7th Dr. Kurien Memorial Lecture. IRMA values his association and would always be ready to contribute towards his efforts as the CEO of NITI Aayog. Shri Amitabh Kant will be speaking today on the path ahead, transformative ideas for India. I now invite Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO of NITI Aayog, to deliver the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture. Mr. Amitabh Kant.
Mr. Dilip Rath, the NDDB Chairman, Professor Hitesh Bhatt, Director IRMA, faculty members, all the distinguished guests, dear students, it's a great privilege and an honor for me to deliver the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture. I was looking forward to being personally present. I had committed myself to this date to the NDDB chairman. Unfortunately, due to some very urgent official meeting, I have not been able to join you personally, and this is my loss entirely. I can assure you that I will be there very shortly, and I will spend a full day with all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be part of the immense legacy which the great architect, Padma Vibhushan Dr. Kurien, of the Indian cooperative revolution has left behind for each one of us to cherish. And I think the unique role model that he has been, he has left the stage for our young workforce to follow him as change agents for a better tomorrow. His heritage is immense. He's a great legend to follow. Dr. Kurien's contribution to economic development at the grassroots level is an inspiration for all of us, not merely to look up to, but to follow. Dr. Kurien pioneered the Anand pattern of dairy cooperatives to replicate it nationwide based on the bottom-up and the top-down approaches simultaneously. Dr. Kurien launched the great brands Amul in milk, Dhara, Operation Golden Flow for cooking oils, Mother Dairy, Operation Flood, and Safal for vegetables. And today, these are all household names. He founded the Institute of Rural Management in Anand to groom managers for the cooperatives. Many of these students today occupy very important positions in microfinance, in cooperatives, in rural banking, in rural marketing, in consulting, in public policy, including NITI Aayog, infrastructure, think tanks, and they are leaving a very, very strong imprint wherever they go. They are very outstanding products. And I can assure you from my own experience of dealing with the alumni of IRMA, both in Kerala and in Government of India, that the students who graduate from IRMA are truly outstanding. One of the first few jobs that I took up right after my subdivision was to work in the fisheries sector of Kerala. We replicated Dr. Kurien's model through an organization called the Malsya Fed. The traditional fishermen in Kerala then used to get only about 18 to 20% of the market price of fish. There were layers and layers of middlemen. For almost 3.5, 4 years, I worked in the sector, forming their self-help groups and providing better technology, new crafts, which are fiberglass crafts, outboard motors, new technology to enable them to go much further into the sea, new fishing nets, which are now known as disco nets, and we introduced beach level auctions so that there could be a better intersection of demand and supply. And we opened their bank accounts so that a substantial component of their daily catch could go into their bank account and some proportion could go to repay the loans which they had taken. One of the challenges was that traditional fisherwomen used to catch buses, which was very difficult for them to keep their fish baskets. And we introduced fisherwomen buses specially designed for them so that their baskets could be kept at the back and they could sit in front. And I'm very delighted to tell you that simply because we had emulated Dr. Kurien's learning, we could take the returns of traditional fishermen from almost 20% to close to about 80% simply because we were able to introduce beach level auctions and do value added processing and enable fisherwomen to take the fish catch through about 25 odd buses to the city. And this was a great learning experience for me, because my belief is that in these sectors, it's very important for India to introduce technology, form self-help groups, and also to ensure that our traditional farmers increase their returns through better technology, through self-help groups, through cooperatives, and through better marketing. Ladies and gentlemen, one of our key challenges is that we need the Anand pattern of cooperative simply because we need a revolution for pulses, for coarse grains, for supply chain of perishables. There is a huge potential, and I think with technology supporting e-auction, we have a new paradigm in value chain and multiple players in the e-retail segment to support the supply chain. We need a smart collaboration amongst the cooperatives, the public and the private sector, which can be a game changer to enhance the earnings of our producers. And without this, it will not be possible for us to double the earnings and the incomes of our farmers. The essential strengths must be identified, and all of us in government and cooperatives must engage in enhancing the strength and capabilities of the producers and working with new age institutions. And I am particularly delighted that today you have a vast number of young people with a vast number of startups who are trying to provide new technology, and new technology must drive production and productivity. I am saying this because we need to enhance productivity in agriculture and allied sector. India lags behind global peers in agriculture productivity. In major crops, rice and wheat, our yields are very low. In India, our yields are only 53.3% and 57.2% in rice and wheat of the yield as compared to China. So only 53.3% and 57.2% in rice and wheat as compared to the yields in China. In horticultural crops, productivity is less than half of that of USA for potatoes, and only 68.8% of that compared to Indonesia for bananas. Now, unless we don't provide technology and we don't enhance production and productivity, and unless we don't ensure better retail distribution, better marketing, it will be very difficult for us to double the farmer's income. And to my mind, technology, enhancement of productivity, and better markets, and restructuring the markets with technology and linking them up technologically and digitally is the long-term solution for enhancing production, productivity, and enhancing the earnings of our farmers. There is no substitute for this. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, in Silicon Valley, there is a lot of innovation taking place. But much of that innovation is for defense weapons, it is for driverless cars. These are not the innovations which India requires. You can be a very creative location, you can be one of the most creative places. But there are no challenges in Silicon Valley. Most of the challenges are in India. And to my mind, one of the biggest challenges in India, the challenge is of how do we enhance production and productivity of our farmers based on providing them seed, fertilizer on real-time basis depending on the weather and soil condition, and deciding how much seed they require, how much water they require. And this requires us to provide better technology to our farmers. And I'm particularly delighted that you have a range of startups today. You have a vast number of young people with their startups, and I would like to particularly say that I've been interacting with a number of startups as a part of the Startup India movement. And in the agriculture sector, I find many startups who are doing outstanding work. And I would particularly like to name AgroStar, Crow Farm, Arav, Unmanned Systems, iBono, Cropin, Ninja Cart, Waycool, Tessol, EM3 Agri Services, Intello Labs, FarmLink, Gramco Infratech. Many of them are doing outstanding work to provide better technology on a real-time basis, and many of them are using artificial intelligence, some of them are using blockchain technology, and to my mind, these are all young dynamic students using cutting-edge technology to drive growth, and therefore it's only new technology which will fuel further growth in agriculture sector. And there are huge business opportunities for livelihood enhancing the self-help groups. And to my mind, self-help groups are critical. Self-help groups are critical because my own experience of Kerala shows that the self-help groups under flagship schemes like National Rural Livelihood Mission, they are extremely sustainable and they are extremely enterprising. And they will succeed only when we are able to, when the product service they deliver can be correctly identified and we can provide good market linkages and customer-centric quality linkages. And this can be achieved with a very evolved chain of cooperation amongst institutions which enable the complete value chain, and value chain is critical. And I am saying this because while we are in a sector like agriculture, we must understand that the world today, almost 80% in the world, 80% of the produce in the world, whether it be agriculture, manufacturing, industry, is all sold through global value chains. And therefore, in India, only 33% is sold through value chains. We need to make agriculture a very integral part of the value chain. And farmers must get linked to marketing and retail so that they get a better produce. And we must ensure that they are able to, on a real-time basis, know what price is available to them across the country, not merely in their respective regional areas. One of the biggest challenges of agriculture is that there is too many middlemen in this sector. And as long as we are not able to get rid of the middlemen, they will keep getting low prices for their produce. And the only way to eliminate a lot of middlemen who continue to speak on behalf, who claim that they are speaking on behalf of farmers, is the only way to get rid of them is by bringing in technology and digitization in the sector. And therefore, my belief is that I'm a great believer that across sector, it will be very difficult to double the farmer's income till we do not lay stress on not merely agriculture, but also on allied activities. And therefore, the increased earnings have to come from dairy, it has to come from fisheries, it has to come from many other sectors, including handicraft, geographical indicators produce, organic produce, local tourism. All this have to be leveraged upon to double the farmer's income. And we need to converge and integrate all these activities with agriculture. Agriculture cannot be looked in isolation. And therefore, the role of self-help groups in a three-tier arrangement to enhance livelihoods is critical. Ladies and gentlemen, institutional reform and innovation for a collaborative and coherent effort to engage with markets is truly the need of the day. And to my mind, the answer lies in a model which resembles the early success stories of the cooperative movement in India. There is a dire need to make the collective enterprises, and this is where I foresee the role of institutions like IRMA. Firstly, I think, to my mind, micro-skilling and microfinance and skilling is very, very critical. Financing is only successful if it is backed by correct planning. This can be achieved by streamlining the efforts of microfinance sector with mechanisms to consistently monitor the enterprising capability and robustness of a business plan. Secondly, skilling, to my mind, is the key to developing the human capabilities to achieve this objective. The need is to harmonize the efforts in a multidisciplinary manner so that we can lead to the end objective of higher production and productivity. And this will not only improve the financial health of microfinance institutions, but also entail financial discipline in our decision making at the grassroots. My experience of Kerala showed that even in a movement like the fisheries sector, even today, one of our challenges was that the actual producer, who's taking lending and who's actually producing, must be the key decision maker. Unless and until they don't become the key decision maker, it will be very difficult for the cooperative movement to succeed and survive in the long run. What was happening even in a very educated sector or educated state like Kerala was that there was non-producers who started becoming decision makers on secondary and the top layers of the decision making process. The cooperative movement can only be successful as long as the decision maker is the producer himself, and the producer must decide at all in every tier of the cooperative movement as to what decisions, what commercial and financial decisions that have to be taken. Ladies and gentlemen, to my mind, to be able to build a prosperous and sustainable agriculture sector, we need to promote and support member-owned producer organizations, and that would enable farmers to enhance productivity through efficient, cost-effective and sustainable resource use and realize higher returns for their produce. And this would enable them to take collective action, have fruitful collaboration with academia, research agencies, civil society and the private sector. So we need to promote economically viable, democratic and self-governing farmer-producer organizations. Secondly, we need to provide the required assistance and resources, policy actions, inputs, technical knowledge, financial resources, infrastructure to greatly strengthen these farmer-producers organizations. Thirdly, we need to remove hurdles in enabling farmers access. The access to the markets is critical. So we need to remove hurdles to ensure that the farmers are able to access the markets through the farmers producer organization, both as buyers and sellers. And fourthly, to my mind, we need to create an enabling policy environment for investments in farmer producers organizations so that they can leverage their collective production and marketing power. Ladies and gentlemen, I was wondering as to what IRMA can do to take this entire movement forward. How do we take this agriculture and allied sector forward, and what can be the role of IRMA in this great movement? And to my mind, the role of IRMA is extremely critical, it's extremely significant. Firstly, it can provide specialist workforce to transform the rural landscape and make the divide between urban and rural much lesser. I'm saying this because one of the key things that's happening is that there is a big movement towards urbanization. Every minute as I speak here today, there are 30 Indians who are moving from rural areas to urban areas. In the next 5 decades, if you go by the latest McKinsey study, there will be 700 million Indians moving to urban areas. But it's important that while there is an urban movement, even today, today we have about close to 59% of our population in agriculture sector or the allied sectors. But even after a decade of this movement, almost about 50%, 48 to 50% of our population will remain in the agriculture sector. And therefore, we need to link the rural and urban areas and make this divide much lesser. Secondly, I think what can IRMA do? Secondly, I think it needs to inculcate the values, which it is doing very effectively, the values of inclusion, equity, people-centric development in our future managers. My view is that as we grow, as India grows at 7.5% and it becomes a country whose ambition is to grow at 9 to 10%, you can't have growth without equity. You need growth with inclusion, and you need managers who are extremely sensitive to this. You need a very people-centric movement of growth. If the divide between the rich and the haves and the have-not continues, we'll have a revolution on hand. And therefore, this division, this bringing in proximity between hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, so we need to my mind, inculcating the values of inclusion, equity, people-centric development is the key to India's future. And many of these values are not taught. Many of these values are not taught in our IITs. They are not taught in our IIMs. And therefore, IRMA plays a very critical role. We have to be extremely sensitive about this. India's growth has to be with equity. Without this, these values are very important to India's growth. And I think, thirdly, we need to collaborate with institutions, both government and private, for cutting-edge socio-economic research on which is the route which India needs to take. And this, IRMA students will need to provide this a very critical role for India's growth. And fourthly, I think synergizing with specific yet unmet needs of the rural sector. The vast range of rural sector requirements. I was in Kashmir recently about apple production and productivity. How do we raise this? I was in Jharkhand recently, in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, where farmers are going in for organic production, bringing back their traditional rice cultivation back. These are all sectors where no student from I can assure you, no student from IIM has the capability, or the determination, the passion which you will find in IRMA students. Only they can meet these specific yet unmet needs of the rural sector. And therefore, IRMA has a very major and significant role to play in India's growth. In fact, to my mind, many of the IITs and IIMs must learn and must emulate many of the values which have been built in IRMA, and they must follow the model which IRMA has built up over the years, so that they can learn how to bring in growth with equity and how they can bring in a passion for rural development. Because without developing rural areas, India cannot grow at 9 to 10%. I'm convinced about this. Many of our rural areas, one of the programs that we are driving is, if you look at the map of India, one of the key reasons is that of our growth not being consistent over a long period of time is because several areas have remained backwards. In NITI Aayog, one of the key schemes that we are driving is the aspirational district program. These are backward districts, but we don't call them backward, we call them aspirational. We are trying to transform these districts in 49 indicators relating to education, health, financial inclusion, digitization, agriculture, productivity, and we are trying to say that these districts in 3 years can become the best districts of the states, and in 5 years can become almost the best districts of India if we are able to bring in passion, energy. There's no other problem with these districts except that the government is not working. There's no energy, there's no passion, there's no determination. And we will be very happy to have students who have graduated out of IRMA to work in these districts to transform. Within NITI, we'll be very happy to take 115 students who will go and work to transform these backward districts, these aspirational districts, and make them some of the best districts of India. And this role can never be fulfilled by students who've graduated out of IIMs. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think IRMA has a very critical, a very major role to play. A very major role to play. Lastly, I think there is a huge role for the emerging institutions. The role of emerging institutions have a very major role to play. If you look at it in promoting technology, in promoting sustainable and inclusive growth, as I said, my views is that there is a need for institutional innovation and reforms in the economy. And institutional reforms, I think, would mean better supply chain, better governance institutions, better microfinance institutions, which can lead to better financial institutions. How do we push for self-help groups? How do we push for farmers, producers, companies, etc.? And for all this, we need new age governance in a very modern welfare state, which is and this new age governance, when we talk about it, it must be citizen-centric, it must facilitate and enable, it must be technologically robust and transparent, and these reforms are currently underway in government in a very big way. One of the key things which we are doing in government is to make India very easy and simple. We had made India very complex, we had made India very complicated, we had made India very difficult with a lot of rules, regulation, procedures. In the last 4 years, this government has tried to make India very easy and simple. We've jumped up 65 positions on the ease of doing business. But this is still work in progress because we want to take India in the top 25. We have also introduced a huge competition among states. We ranked states on ease of doing business. The first year we did it, Gujarat came number 1. Next year, Andhra beat Gujarat. The third year, Telangana beat Andhra and Gujarat. But the good thing was that Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, which were at 25th and 26th position, worked very hard and came 4th and 5th. So if the eastern part of India, which is very mineral rich, agricultural rich, and still remains poor, if they can improve on ease of doing business, they can improve on agriculture production and productivity and on irrigation practices, on dairy and fish farming and all that, all these areas, they can become great models. So our view is that government is pushing for change. The second thing the government is doing is to push digital in a very big way. Digital in a very big way. We are pushing the limits of digitization across sectors. One of the key things, if you look at government, in India, 97-98% of the people pay income tax digitally. If you look at the GST, it's totally cashless and paperless. If you look at the digital payment movement, it's grown by leaps and bounds in the last 2 years. And if you look at government's own transaction, the public finance management system which we do in government, it's all digital. One of the things, if you look at the new health insurance scheme, the Ayushman Bharat which Prime Minister is driving, one of the key things which his ambition is, we are linking up 150,000 primary health centers to the district hospital digitally, so that where doctors are not available, they'll have access to doctors digitally. And secondly, we have the biggest health insurance scheme. Now, the biggest health insurance scheme means that we are covering 500 million Indians, which is more than the population of USA, America and Mexico put together. We are providing them a health insurance of 5 lakh rupees. These are all people below poverty line. And this is the biggest health insurance scheme, but it's totally digital. It's cashless, paperless, and it's portable. And therefore, the way forward is digital. And if we are able to use technology to leapfrog, we will make a big movement forward. And therefore, this will be a very big disruptor in the days to come. And all of you will have to play a very major role. E-governance, to my mind, holds the promise of ensuring transparency, accountability, citizen centrality, and mission mode development. And the bureaucracies around the world are changing, and IT age is providing progressive disruption for efficiency and economy. And various sectors of economy heavily benefit from such change. While other, one of the things which Government of India is absolutely convinced about is that the way forward is digital, and all of us must use this. I also wanted to focus a little bit more on, our objective of new age governance, which I was talking about, and the millennial. Our view is that my view is that the millennial institutions in both public and private sector have to be designed, and this is very important. All institutions in public and private sectors have to be carefully designed to ensure inclusivity, responsiveness, accountability, and sustainability. And sustainability is very critical. With because of our commitment to Paris goals, and why I'm making this point is that quite often in India we get into sunset sectors. And by the time we get into the sunset sector, it is very late in the day to be able to compete with other countries of the world. So it's very important that we get into sunrise areas. And the key is in sunrise areas is areas of renewable. And the future will belong to storage and batteries. That will be a very big area of growth. Storage and batteries would require a lot of IRMA graduates to work on that technology. And secondly, I think if you look at the whole sector of transportation, and in the agriculture sector, all this, the tractor movement, the movement of tillers, all this will have to be solar linked. And why I'm saying this is because the world is seeing one of the biggest disruption taking place. The cost of battery, which is about $276 per hour, is likely to fall to $76 per kilowatt hour in the next 3 to 4 years. And this will make battery operated electric vehicles on par with combustion cars. So in 4 years' time, electric vehicles will become cheaper than combustion cars. And this will transform the whole transportation sector also, and will have a huge bearing on the agriculture and allied sector also. So these are critical things, and it's very important that we get into sunrise areas rather than sunset areas. Now, farmer producer groups hold the promise of delivering benefits. Because they are able to do forward and backward linkages. They form the genesis of various efforts to transform the rural sector. I also wanted to stress about creating alternate livelihood opportunities for gainful employment, because the agriculture sector can't sustain such a high level of population. And we need gainful employment in allied activities, beyond farming activities. The transition from agriculture to low skilled and then the high skilled portfolio has served as a success story for the Asian tigers. And this will require institutions in the right direction to provide for skilling, for self-employment, market linkage, and credit support. I'm stressing this because we are also in the midst of one of the biggest disruptions. Why this requires reskilling and skilling is because we are also in the midst of one of the biggest disruptions through artificial intelligence. We are in the midst of disruption through blockchain, and therefore these are new technologies which will alter us. And microfinance requires a credit plus approach. With the right institutional support for skilling. We also need, it requires credit plus approach with the right institutional support for skilling, financial literacy, banking penetration, and a rural cadre for financial inclusion. And this, to my mind, is very important. That financial inclusion in many of these areas cannot be achieved without a whole cadre, rural cadre to push for it. And this, to my mind, is a very big challenge for India. We've been working on digitization, we've been working on financial inclusion in the backward district, and what we are finding is a severe shortage of trained cadre, rural cadre, which can push for this. So one of our experiences is that we need innovative approaches, and what we have done in the aspirational district is that we have created a benchmark. We first said where these districts are, we are monitoring them on data on a real-time basis. We take data on a real-time basis and we rank these districts. We put out these districts much like we rank the states on ease of doing business. We've ranked states on agriculture. Similarly, we are ranking these aspirational districts. And we are saying which district is moving up, which district is moving down, in which indicator it's moving up or moving down, so that there is competition amongst these districts. And what we have seen is that if you are creating competition on a real-time basis, there's huge improvement, and we've seen a lot of improvement in these districts, because we are saying that good administration and good politics is good governance. We are putting the data on a real-time out in public domain. We are naming and shaming these districts. We are saying if you don't perform, the district collector on these indicators, if he's not able to perform, he must be shifted out. If he's not performing, the MLA must be voted out. So naming and shaming is very critical. And therefore, this to my mind is the key, and we will be very happy to work with IRMA on some of these things that we are doing in aspirational districts on these indicators. I wanted to talk a little bit about emerging technologies and their potential. And to my mind, technology in rural areas, we need to tap artificial intelligence in agriculture, rural industry, IT platforms and supply chain management. ENAM can never be successful without all this. We'll have a lot of data. We need to be able to analyze this data, put it out in public domain. We need to tap the potential of smart devices for beneficiaries. Artificial intelligence holds the promise of delivering to the agriculture and allied sector a solution for plethora of challenges, both on the input side bottlenecks. We can solve the irrigation puzzle. We can find the solution to the marketing failure. We can really hone up the supply chain. All this is possible with artificial intelligence. And models like ENAM have to be constantly monitored and reformed to incorporate progressive changes in the agriculture supply chain. A common agriculture market across the country, not which is digitally linked on a real-time basis. And let me confess that the present ENAM market is not on a real-time basis. We need a common agriculture market digitally across the country, which will increase the ever-lagging agriculture growth rate because it will produce a better price to the farmer. And this is important. And smartphone and smart devices must be leveraged by policymakers and industry alike to deliver services to the rural citizen. And this will be very important as we go along, because the future belongs to India's use mobile telephony to technologically leapfrog. So, ladies and gentlemen, my own experience of having worked in the fisheries sector and the rural development sector of Kerala, I led the movement of both fisheries cooperatives and of self-help groups. My belief is that the answer to many of the problems of the country lies in forming cooperatives, forming self-help groups, but running them extremely professionally and using technology to leapfrog. Without providing better marketing, without providing technology, without providing better access to the market, it will not be possible for these cooperatives and self-help groups to make a quantum jump forward. It's only with enhancement of productivity through technology and digitally can they achieve huge success. I wanted to touch a little bit on entrepreneurship as the vessel for inclusive and job-led growth, because our vision of the Prime Minister is also to drive entrepreneurship, and one of the key things we've tried to do through the startup movement is to create job creators. And the entrepreneurs who are able to drive innovation and drive technology absorption. And one of the things we are doing in NITI Aayog is to use the Atal Innovation Mission. We are providing tinkering. We have supported about close to 3,000 tinkering labs, where we provide robots, 3D printers, drones, everything at the grassroots level, from class 6 onwards. So what we've seen is that a lot of schools young students from class 6 onwards have become extremely innovative. And we are moving away from the Anglo-Saxon system of education, where, students pass classes by just reading books, one class after another. Use technology, and they are all, students from class 6 are doing better than class 10. They are more smarter, they are more technology savvy because they're using technology. And this is leading to better opportunities for employment because new jobs are getting created. We are pushing for this, through tinkering labs, through incubators, through startup. I think one more aspect I wanted to touch upon briefly was that there is a need for natural resource management in the context of today's climate change. And there is a very big role for institutions like IRMA to push for watershed management, soil and crop care, good irrigation models. We need to focus on agroforestry, fisheries, aquaculture in a very sustainable manner. And we need to have better knowledge of stakeholder rights, ecosystem conservation. Many of us need this kind of knowledge and expertise. There is a huge role that specialist institutions such as IRMA can play in collaborating with the government in many areas. Partnership in areas like aspirational district program, partnership for monitoring and evaluation of various rural interventions and developing a better design of schemes, service, serving as a partner for think tank, many think tanks across the country and collaborating with the efforts. The last point I wanted to touch upon was that the role of women is very critical. In India's rural sector particularly, the role of women and their contribution to India's GDP growth is very important. In India only 22% of women contribute to GDP. Worldwide average is 48%. If we are able to take the role of women in GDP contribution to 48%, they will be adding $700 billion to India's GDP. And therefore, men have a great responsibility. All the young boys who are passing out have a great responsibility to consciously push for gender parity. You have to push for greater jobs for women. And without greater jobs for women and consciously ensuring that women contribute significantly, this is a very major component of Prime Minister's Beti Bachao Beti Padhao program. And therefore, role of women in India's rural economy and gender parity is very critical. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to conclude, and I would like to conclude by emphasizing the importance of innovative thinking and risk-taking. Without innovation and risk-taking, India cannot grow, and it's important that all of you must innovate and must take risks. I would also like to emphasize that India cannot grow without replicating the Anand model in many other formats, in many other areas, particularly in areas of pulses, vegetables, etc. I would also like to emphasize that technology has to be a major disruptor for progressive change, and IRMA must take the lead in many of these new technological areas. I would, ladies and gentlemen, like to stress that all of you must become great leaders. And a great leader is one who challenges the status quo. Don't become status quoist, you must become an agent of change. Also, don't ever be a pessimist. Don't ever be a pessimist, always be an optimist. There will be several challenges. All of us face challenges every day. But these challenges need to be overcome. And this requires a very positive frame of mind. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, it's very difficult to deliver alone. Don't ever be a solo player. If you think you can deliver alone, it's not possible. You need to build a great team. And this requires you to be both a team player and a team leader. And therefore, always, one of the great reasons why Japan succeeded post-World War II, after it was almost demolished, was because they had the art of being great team players. In India, we have individual excellence, but we are very poor team players. And therefore, unless and until you are a great team player, it will be very difficult for India to grow rapidly. And Indians must learn the art of good team playing, but also good team leadership. And therefore, I would only like to say that absorb technology, disrupt the system, don't be an agent of status quo, be an agent of change, always be an optimist, and always learn to be a team player. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to being personally present with all of you very shortly and spending a full day of mine with all of you. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and a great honor for me to deliver what I will deliver before. I will be very happy to take a few questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for delivering a very inspiring and enriching speech and giving an insight to all of us regarding transformative ideas such as increasing agricultural production and productivity using technology for meeting rural needs of rural areas. Thank you for a highly informative session and envisioning the path ahead. Now I request the volunteers to collect the chips containing questions from those who are remaining to ask the questions from the audience. I request the Chief Guest, sir, to respond to the questions given in the chips collected from the audience. So, the first question for today's session is from Professor Satyendra Pandit. He is Village Fieldwork Segment Chair. The question is, during the recently concluded Village Fieldwork Segment, IRMA students visited 88 villages of the country across 17 states to study villages closely across important themes such as governance, health and education, financial institutions and livelihoods, etc. With the vast repository of this data from 88 villages and around 1700 households, IRMA would want to come out with a comprehensive report about state of Indian villages every 2 years. How can we achieve synergetic relationship between IRMA and NITI Aayog to take this forward?
No, I'm very delighted to learn that there has been a number of field visits and that you've analyzed the data. What we should do is to learn from and benefit from the data which is coming in from IRMA study and say how we can, essential objective of both NITI Aayog and IRMA is to see how we can enhance earnings and how we can help enhance productivity in these villages. Also, it's very difficult for India to grow without improving learning outcomes. While we've been able to provide access of education, learning outcomes still remain very poor in many of our villages. Health outcomes remain very poor and we remain caught in a vicious cycle of malnutrition. In the last 2-3 years, the government has heavily focused on improving nutrition through the Poshan Abhiyan. We are trying to converge at the grassroots level. We are also trying to ensure that learning outcomes radically improve. We are trying to push for better improvement in health delivery. All these are the objectives of your study as well. We would like to benefit from your village study, and our aspirational district program can greatly interact together. I'll be very happy to send my aspirational district team, the entire team, to IRMA, and we would be very happy to co-opt many of the students who've gone and worked in the villages as a part of our aspirational district program. So it has to be a two-way learning process, and I think both of us need to work, NITI Aayog and IRMA need to work together as a team to transform rural India together. We'll be very happy to do this in partnership with IRMA.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next question is, during my village fieldwork segment, I have witnessed that network coverage and internet are work in progress. Therefore, apart from technology, could you suggest other solutions to to deal with the middleman problem?
No, there are, one of the uniqueness about IRMA is that you go to the field, you interact with the villagers, you interact with the actual producer. And the solution to my mind is that unless and until we are not able to link up the actual producer with the market to the producer is the key. Our markets need a radical transformation, and this is possible today because digitally, you can today link up all markets on a real-time basis digitally. And while a farmer, say a fish producer, he produces fish which is highly perishable in, say, Videnium village of Kerala. Now he is getting, for the shrimp that he's caught that day, he's getting 5 rupees per kilo. Now the same fish in Ernakulam market is getting 55 rupees. How do we ensure that he's got access to that information that fish is actually selling for 55 rupees and that he can... The only way is that we are able to digitally link the producer straight to the market. Now that was not possible earlier. Today it is possible to do that using mobile telephony and using apps. It's very doable. So we need to, now what has happened in ENAM is that you have a ENAM market which is not linked, all ENAMs are not linked digitally on a real-time basis across the country. If a producer in Tamil Nadu must know what is the price he's going to get in Haryana or in Punjab, or a producer in Bihar must know what is the price in Tamil Nadu. And so that eventually in the country there's a management of pricing using technology and everybody has access to information. There is asymmetry of information, and that is why, because there is lack of information, the prices get suppressed, and the only beneficiary of all this is the middleman. And all of them claim to be speaking in the voice of the farmer, and they are riddled with, all these sectors are riddled with farmers, with middlemen, because there is asymmetry of information. What we have to ensure is that we are able to provide access of information using technology and digitization to the actual producer. And once that starts happening, the farmer will understand his right. Number two, I think it's very important that in the cooperative movement, all decision making must be done by the actual producer. So the primary cooperatives, the secondary cooperatives, all the layers, it should be only the producer who is the final decision maker. If you look at why the cooperative movement fails in places like UP and Bihar is because politicians put politicians as decision maker. Now I am the producer of agriculture, but the decision on how that is to be marketed is all taken by middlemen who are in the name of being politicians. They're all middlemen. Now, unless I don't take all decisions at all layers as a primary producer must be able to get into the secondary layer and the third layer and take the final decisions. Without that, the cooperative movement it's like a corporate body. I mean, in a corporate body, the person who has put equity and invested his money is the final decision maker. He decides. I've put in equity, I am a shareholder. So the actual shareholder in a cooperative movement must take the final decision. Those are two critical things. And that is the only way for us to enhance production.
Thank you, sir. We have a theoretical question coming from an economist. Question is, are there suboptimally high number of people involved in agriculture today? If so, how does one send out of agriculture?
No, that's a very important question. There is, first of all, we must accept that there are too many people in the agriculture sector. Accept that fact, Now, what has happened is that, let us look at other countries. One of the key things, and I quite admire the fact that China in the last 3 decades have listed it has lifted a very vast segment of its population above the poverty line. And it was able to lift a vast segment of its population using the process of urbanization. Urbanization is inevitable. It will happen in India, but firstly we must do planned, innovative and sustainable urbanization. You know, when America urbanized, land, gas, water were cheaply available, and because they were cheaply available, America made sprawling cities. They made cities like Atlanta where 99% of the people travel by cars. And because cars were used, they made very polluting cities. What we need to do is to create compact, dense urbanization on the back of public transportation. We need to have a lot of more public transportation. So we need to take people away from agriculture, put them in the process of urbanization, but the process of urbanization must be well planned, it must be innovative, it must be sustainable. Secondly, the way other countries did was to move from agriculture to small-scale manufacturing and then manufacturing. And in India, the manufacturing sector actually contributes only 17% of our GDP. We need to take it up to 25% of our GDP. And this will require us to give a huge thrust to manufacturing. And thirdly, no country in the world has grown without exports. Japan, Korea, China, they all grew on the back of exports. So India needs to become a very big exporting country. And we also need to export our agriculture produce in a very sustained manner. This will enable our farmers to get a better returns. So you need to become an exporting country in a very big way. And to my mind, without exports, it will be very difficult for India to grow. Without urbanization, it will be very difficult for India to grow on a consistent basis over 9 to 10%. It will be very difficult for India to grow without manufacturing. You can't get into say that I'm going to grow on the back of services sector. You can't be a post-industrial economy with such a large population of 1.3 billion. So you need growth with jobs. You need to take people away from agriculture into semi-skilled, small-scale sector, into manufacturing, into urbanization, into industries. This is very important. And unless you don't take agriculture, there's a huge amount of disguised unemployment in agriculture. We must accept that and take people out of agriculture.
Thank you, sir. Our next question comes from our Professor H.S. Shailendra. Question is, government is setting up IIMs and IITs and not IRMAs. So what can NITI Aayog and the government do to create and support more IRMAs for rural transformation?
No, I totally agree with this question that actually we need to replicate the IRMA model in many states of India. Actually, while this has been a great success in Gujarat, we need to create IRMAs in Bihar. We need to create many IRMAs in Uttar Pradesh. We need to create many IRMAs in Madhya Pradesh. We need, as I said, the significance of IRMA lies in the fact that all of you have a grassroots understanding of India. The students from IIT and IIM do not have a grassroots understanding of India. And unless you don't visit the villages of India, you will never understand the problem of 70% of Indians. So we need to have many more IRMAs rather than have many more IIMs. But this would require, to my mind, a great amount of commitment of the state governments also. And I think it will do us well if IRMA invites, if Mr. Bhatt and Mr. Rath invite some of the chief ministers from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar to visit because these states are caught in a vicious cycle of underdevelopment, of education, of health, of lack of agriculture productivity, etc. If they come and see IRMA, they will feel greatly motivated, inspired, and they will get so inspired, and I'm sure they will go and replicate the IRMA model in their states also.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is, what will it take for technology startups like Ninja Car to scale and reach the remotest of remote farmers?
Yeah, so we have a number of startups in agriculture sector. I just want to point out two things. One is that startup ecosystem is a very, very, it's a challenging environment. Those who do well actually get financing from investors, and they grow and mature over a period of time, and many startups fail, and there is nothing wrong in failing. In India, our parents and our students are very shy of failing. There is nothing wrong in failing. All the top startups of the world, they have failed once, they have failed twice, they have failed thrice, but the fourth time they become a billionaire. So if you want to become a billionaire, there's nothing wrong in failing. And Indian psyches, Indian professors, Indian parents, Indian officers must accept that failure is a very integral part of the innovation ecosystem. It's a very, it's necessary that we must learn the art of failing. I'm saying this because parents don't want their student to ever fail in innovation. Nowhere else does this happen. In America, nobody minds the children failing once, twice, thrice, but succeeding the fourth time. So please don't bother. Please don't worry too much about this. You'll learn from your experience and succeed. Now, there are many startups. I named some of them. One of the key things about agriculture is that they must use technology. They must have backward-forward linkages. They must be able to provide good service to the consumer. What the consumer in agriculture sector wants is technology. He wants either equipment, produce, or fertilizer or seeds at the right time, at the right place, depending on weather and soil conditions. If you are able to provide him that and give him access to technology, the farmer will lap up the startup. Many of these startups like AgroStar are able to do this. Many of them are able to provide good art using data. They are able to produce using artificial intelligence. They are able to provide good information flow, and that is what the success of many of these startups. I don't want to name Ninja Cart alone, but all the startups in agriculture sector, I want to wish them all the best and all success, as long as they have good forward backward linkage and they are able to provide a better return to the agriculture producer. All of them will succeed.
Thank you, sir. We have questions from Priya ma'am. So, sir, you focused on productivity gaps in India across stubble and cash crops. Another parallel phenomenon we see is feminization of agriculture because of outmigration of men from rural areas. So what kind of interventions are being planned to deal with supporting women in agriculture?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is to have, my experience of Kerala shows that the best way to do this is to have one, self-help groups for women. Self-help groups, wherever they've been formed in the southern part, have been very successful. This gives a lot of confidence, a lot of rights to women, and we need to spread this. Secondly, if you look at the eastern part of India, we are seeing a lot of dropouts of girl students from school, and many of these the dropouts is happening in the eastern part of India. We need to ensure that the girls go to schools, and two challenges which we had faced in this area. One is that access of the girl student to the school, and secondly, there was no sanitation facility. So now we've been able to provide toilets to all these schools. Secondly, in many of these villages, we have ensured that the girl student is provided with cycles so that they are able to go to the rural areas. But I think wherever we have given an opportunity to girls and to women, they've done better than men. In fact, in all the competitive exam today, women are doing better than men In the IS exam for the last 3-4 years, women have been topping. All the boys are not performing half as well as girls. So we need to provide more opportunities to women. That's all, to my mind. Wherever we have provided opportunities, in the field of health, in the field of medicine, in the field of education, girls are doing much better. And this is what we need to do, provide greater opportunities for women.
Thank you, sir. We have a question coming from PRM 39 student. Question is, land fragmentation is a major problem for rural India. The next generation in each family is moving away from agriculture. So with the help of NITI Aayog, how can we incentivize young people to stay in agriculture?
Two things. One is that we've come out with this land leasing and contract farming. To my mind, contract farming and land leasing is very important. And we've come out with draft model laws which many states are now implementing contract farming and land leasing, so that people who want to get out of agriculture don't feel, if they're getting out of agriculture, let them go. But others can do contract farming and land leasing and go ahead and do this. Secondly, even those who want to leave agriculture and coming from agriculture sector, they want to move in. They can make a huge difference to agriculture sector. The agriculture sector has the potential to, in terms of markets, in terms of cold storages, in terms of providing better transportation access, because we put in a huge amount of resources of rural development department for better roads. We've made roads, but there's no transportation. So you need young entrepreneurs to do that. You need young entrepreneurs to build up cold storages. You need more young entrepreneurs to do value addition in agriculture. You need more young entrepreneurs to spread digitization in agriculture. You need more entrepreneurs to provide better seeds and fertilizers. All this these are huge business opportunities. Those who don't want to get into actual agriculture can use many of these allied activities to have an impact on agriculture and to double the farmers' incomes. So I'll take this as can I take this as the last question?
Yes, sir, sure. But if you insist, if I may ask another question, it's up to you. I mean, one more, sir. May I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure. But you're asking too many difficult questions.
But sir, your answers are fabulous, and that will make your... Yeah, please go ahead. So one more question. Yes, sure, sir. So this question is from student who studied APMCs in his village fieldwork project. So the question is, what are the challenges that the government faces in getting state governments to implement Model APMC Act?
Yeah. So this is a big challenge, very big challenge, and one of the challenges which NITI Aayog is facing is to bring in, convince the state government that the Model APMC Act is important, that this is critical, and that states must have the political will to do this. One of the reasons why farmers are not able to get the real price for their produce, or we are not able to create good agricultural markets, is because of this. And we've been trying to push the states. We work in a spirit of cooperative federalism. So our job is to constantly keep working with the states. Now some states have moved forward. I think the benefits of those states should be promoted and marketed and spread to other states. At the end of the day, it's about political will, and I think what we have to, what we are trying to convince the political systems in state is that without enhancement of production, productivity, without infusion of technology, without well-functioning markets, If you put constraints on markets and access of goods to the markets, you will never be able to improve the earnings of farmers. And unless the earnings of farmers do not go up, politicians will get penalized in elections after elections. And therefore, the power of the vote lies in the hands of people who live in rural areas and in the hands of farmers. And if you want to ensure that their earning goes up, they have a better livelihood, we must ensure technology, enhancement of productivity, access of better markets, and better linkages through technology. And all this requires the implementation of the Model APMC Act. Without that, it will not happen. And therefore, politicians will learn it, and administrators will learn it, I'm sure, in due course. And
Thank you so much, sir. I thank the audience.
no, I'm saying all this because because my belief is that it's very important that in the long run, while in the short run, the government is trying to provide MSPs, and in the culture of waiving farm loans is not the answer in agriculture sector. Waiving farm loans in the agriculture sector will do a lot of damage to the agriculture sector in the long run. We need to take a long-term perspective of how to enhance productivity in the agriculture sector. This is important.
Yes, so thank you, sir, I thank the audience for their participation and our honorable chief guest for the responses. I now invite the Chief Administrative Officer, IRMA, to offer a vote of thanks.
Honorable Speaker, CEO of NITI Aayog, Shri Amitabh Kant, respected Chairman, IRMA, Shri Dilip Rath, respected Director, IRMA, Professor Hitesh Bhatt, esteemed members of the society and governing body of IRMA, officers and staff members of IRMA, NDDB, GCMMF, AMUL, and all sister organizations, esteemed faculty members, dignitaries from the press, friends, and participants of the postgraduate diploma in rural management and fellow program in rural management. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this august occasion. On behalf of IRMA, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our distinguished speaker, respected Shri Amitabh Kant, for inspiring us with his highly informative and thought-provoking lecture on the path ahead, transformative ideas for India. The way you explained the topic, sir, was indeed exemplary. Though we definitely missed having you here in person at this event, but through video conferencing, we were able to connect very well with you. Thank you so much for answering all the questions from the audience. Our sincere thanks to Shri Lav Bhardwaj, our PRM alumnus working with NITI Aayog, for all the coordination work towards organizing this lecture successfully. I wish to express my gratitude to the esteemed board members and dignitaries from the media for taking time out for attending this program. I thank all our faculty members, alumni, and participants of postgraduate diploma in rural management and fellow program in rural management for their active participation in making this a memorable occasion. I extend thanks to our chairman, Shri Dilip Rath, sir, for inviting our distinguished speaker and for always encouraging us. I wish to thank our director, Professor Hitesh Bhatt, and the director's office for all their efforts and continuous support. My deep sense of gratitude to Professor Paresh Bhatt, our IT coordinator, Professor H.K. Mishra, Senior Manager Systems, and the entire IT team of IRMA and NDDB for making all the video conferencing arrangements. I extend my thanks to all my colleagues, the resident engineer and her team, ATDC in charge and his team, finance, administration, and purchase, for all the splendid arrangements. I thank all the employees of NDDB who have worked very hard towards ensuring smooth conduct of this program. I thank all the volunteers, both from the staff and the participants, for rendering all the assistance towards this program. IRMA thanks each one of you for participating in the 7th Dr. Verghese Kurien Memorial Lecture and for making this event so very much successful with your contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I request all of you to rise for national anthem. जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंग तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे. Thank you.